Start moving on here doing this video because I saw this hilarious article on what culture, and it's hilarious. The best. I'm gonna link to it right here. "10 reasons Nolan's Batman is actually a total pussy" on whatculture.com. 10 reasons Nolan's Batman is actually a total pussy. He is. He's a bitch. Yeah. You see right there. It says, in fact, but what you have missed among all the posturing and wringing hand grim realism is that Nolan's Batman is probably the worst superhero that has ever been on screen. Remember this? See this? 10 reasons Nolan's Batman is actually a total pussy. Look at that, Brian. But what you might have missed among all the posturing and wringing hand grim realism is that Nolan's Batman is probably the worst superhero that's ever been on screen. As Batman, he is definitely engaging, but while both are recognizable on the surface, Nolan's artistic agenda scooped out the core of the character. You see that? What pisses me off? Bitch, real fans, not phony ass fans like you, John, know that Bale and Nolan's Batman is fucking garbage. I don't care what you think. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're a hypocrite, John. What pisses me off? You say you love the comics, then you hypocritically say the comic books don't mean anything, but you get the issues. You're a bandwagon fan. What pisses me off? You're a fake ass fan, John Ferreira, and you should fuck off. Nolan is garbage. You have horrible fucking taste, and you gotta deal with that. Nolan is a fucking shit director, and his Batman is a shit Batman, John. I don't give a fuck what you say. You're clueless and a fucking idiot. Just let me see. Right here. Again, among the 10 reasons Nolan's Batman is actually a total pussy. Let me see. Honorable mention. Honorable mention. His opponents are comically ridiculous. Aside from the stupid but predictable problem with enemies being overly generous and attacking individually rather than simply overwhelming the fight choreography in Nolan's trilogy is pretty impressive. Sadly, we didn't actually get to see most of it thanks to Nolan's odd combat cinematography that missed pretty much everything and shook everything else up way too much. But it wasn't bad enough to miss the henchman who inconceivably fell over without context, suggesting quite awfully that Batman wasn't really fighting them. See, number 10. Let me see. I go for number 10. Again, for the 10 reasons Nolan Batman is actually a total pussy. His punches make the Joker laugh. See that one? The Joker isn't exactly the easiest guy to push over, but the Dark Knight is pretty clear about the fact that his insanity and his ruthless dedication to complex plots are what make him the fearsome foe he is. He is not a powerhouse like Bane or a masterfully skilled combatant like Ra's al Ghul, and he lacks the fatal self-destructive strand that makes Two-Face so dangerous. He is a master tactician who embraces chaos, but is just as tightly regulated as Batman, though, by compulsion to destroy, provoke, and there's little sense that he's a fighter. And yet Batman's attempts to provoke and terrify him during the interrogation had little more than a slightly put out look, and worse, some of that infectious, unhinged laughter, all that training, all that experience, expensive tech, and Batman can't even make a lunatic without so much as a single ninja skill to his name cower and shrink in his presence. He's supposed to be huge. Well, Bale is not huge. A Fletch is. He's supposed to be a huge physical threat, and yet his interrogation of the Joker might as well have been ferocious tickling sessions. And even worse than that, at one point, later in the film, let's see, even worse than that, at one point later in the film, a fight between them results in the Joker unthinkably overpowering the Bat. Simply wouldn't happen. So, number 10. His punches make the Joker laugh. Number 9. A girl beats Bane for him. In Rises, Nolan builds a mythology for Bane that's simultaneously legend building and cathartic after the abuse. Let me see. And then the plot twist. Talia reveals herself, and Bane is pushed out of the spotlight. He becomes a lovesick puppy, as uninteresting and weak as he was irresistible and charismatic earlier. And the reason for that quickly becomes clear. Batman needs his moment of revitalization, his shot at personal redemption, and in order for that to really work, there needs to be a compromise in Bane's powers. So we see the chink in the armor, and Batman has this opportunity to show that he's still the man, and then Catwoman rides in, blows Bane up, and robs Bane of his opportunity to beat another one of his demons. Joe Chill is killed by someone else, Two-Face by gravity, the Joker a circumstance. Yeah, number 9. A girl beats Bane for him. Number 8. This is he invents nothing. It's true. Lucius dude does all the work for his ass. He does nothing on his own. He invents nothing. Originally, comic book Batman is a genius, empowered by an unending checkbook that makes even the most ludicrous of inventions a possibility. That was always the best portrait of the character. When he was inventing his own gadgets, there was more to him than a brat with a company behind him that invented everything for him, and the magic of the character was born. But thanks to Nolan's commitment to realism and his intention to build Wayne Tech commitment to realism and his intention to build Wayne Tech as a legitimate hate and complexly planned business, in order perhaps to atone for the giant financial holes that would otherwise have appeared in the company's books, is a question that Batman fans have always had to contend with. The who built it, the how did he get away with the issues, but the comics never really suffered for it. Even when realism sneaked in and took the inventing away from Bruce Wayne, but then Nolan took the logical jump even further and incorporated hidden side of Wayne Tech's portfolios, as well as reimagining Batman as a Tinkerman whose personal inventions appropriated from his business, like giving them a paint job. So basically, in Nolan's hands, Batman went from being a master inventor with a genius level intellect to a playboy pimping gadgets someone else was making for him. That man, of course, was Lucius Fox, who went from charity-driven financial genius to single-handed tank and aircraft builder, apparently. Exactly. So, number 8. Just recapping. He invents nothing. Number 7. Rachel chooses Dent because he's a bigger badass. Thanks to Nolan's commitment to realism, making Bruce Wayne a more complex and interesting character, an insult to the source, Batman is something of a romantic wimp. He effectively cuckolded by Harvey Dent who steams in with his blonde hair and impeccable jawline and takes his childhood love away from him. And all this despite Rachel acknowledging her love for Bruce. So why won't she love Bruce back? Of course, a lot of it boils down to the fact that she can't handle the sneering at death antics and the chance that he might end up dead in the hands of one of the villains he seeks so ferociously. But there's an inconsistency here that can't be ignored. In The Dark Knight, when a witness somehow manages to pull a gun on Dent in a courtroom without so much as a hint of concern from any of the collected police or judicial staff, despite the gun being openly on his lap, Rachel very clearly gets hot for Dent's badass takedown of the would-be killer. Talk about your double standards. It seems like at the end of the day, Batman simply isn't enough of a badass to make Rachel get over her concerns and get her all hot under the collar like Dent's act of wanton masculinity manages. So Rachel chooses Dent because he's a bigger badass. Number 6. 10 reasons Nolan Batman is actually a pussy. 6. He gives up on his principles because of a dame, or basically because of a chick. Bruce Wayne's decision to turn his back on Batman isn't just motivated by his need to preserve Dent's reputation, because that alone doesn't quite fit what we know of the character. He might have never taken the fall for Dent's murders, but that doesn't mean Gotham City is safe, and the police force have proved itself both inept and corrupt enough to make turning his back a monumentally stupid decision. Part of being Batman, and indeed most of the enduringly popular superheroes in some degree with friction in the police force, so that's clearly out of the reasoning as well. So we're left with the revelation that Wayne chooses to turn his back on Batman because of the death of his one great love. It's not just a matter of principle or virtue. The death of Rachel Dawes serves as the real catalyst, as Wayne cannot live with the fact that his being Batman led directly to her death, rather than going all Wolverine, hitting Berserker level 10, and kicking ass to her death in the vengeance out of the veins of his enemies. Wayne curls up and dies for 8 years. It's not that much of an exaggerated jump to imagine Wayne might have spent some of that time writing poetry to his long-lost love, joining Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in the realm of unwanted, slightly emo heroes. He was fucking emo. Sorry. This Nolan is that as a Twilight tart. This was an emo Twilight Batman. That's what it basically was. So, number 6. He gives up on his principles because of a dame. Number 5. Batman is allergic to retirement. In this movie, he was a bitch and retired after only 1 year for 8 years. So that's number 5. He's allergic to retirement. At the end of The Dark Knight, Batman is the picture of health. He's pretty much in peak condition, both physically and mentally, and his decision to retire to preserve Dent's reputation is designed to be a monumental waste of resources. But in the 8 years between the end of that movie and the start of Rises, something very odd happens that brings Bruce Wayne's status as badass firmly into question. While Bruce is holed up in his mansion like some grumpy voice Miss Havisham, he somehow falls to pieces. He stops training, yes, but removing his body from direct physical threats seems to make his bones, ligaments, and tissues crumble. By the time he is diagnosed by off-puttingly familiar doctor, he has somehow degenerated into an old broken man. Clearly this is symbolic, but some form of wasting would have worked just as well, suggesting that inactivity can somehow harm Bruce Wayne's body, and make all of his old injuries come back? Yes, conditioning comes into question, but debilitating injuries are not fixed using intensive training and combat. That's just not how it works. Number 5, he's allergic to retirement. So that's bullshit right there. Ah, 10 reasons Nolans Batman is actually a total pussy. He's empowered and saved by old men. As we've already said, Batman doesn't invent anything himself, and in Nolan's world, despite very obviously having enough technical skill and knowledge to fix the autopilot on the Bat and make some personalizing touches to the tech he appropriates from his own company, but what makes that worse is that it comes from Lucius Fox. Fox is far from the stereotype of the mad inventor. He is wholly stable to the point of actually being bland, and though he has a magisterial aura about him, he is curiously a cool, and he is never really presented as anything other than a special colleague who helps Bruce out. At least Q enjoyed banter with 007, and we believed that dynamic and accepted that empowerment was justified by Q's superiority. In Nolan's trilogy, Lucius feels a little like he's shoehorned in to accommodate Morgan Freeman. And the result is that it feels like Batman is basically empowered entirely by an old man with a box of tricks who represents no physical threat, even in terms of his charm. And he's not just empowered by Lucius' trinkets. If it wasn't for another old man, Batman would have made it beyond the formative stages in Batman Begins, because his life is literally saved by butler, mother, boyfriend Alfred, who manages to get a snarky comment in about how much of a pussy Bruce is. The line where he says, "What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log?" 10 reasons Nolan's Batman is a pussy. World's greatest detective? Blake, Robin John Blake is better. As well as not being the inventor we thought he was, Nolan's Batman isn't even the detective he should be either. In fact, he actually cheats. In fact, he actually cheats his way to a lot of his discoveries. A lot of the time, Nolan's narration requires so much mystery that Batman basically knows nothing for the most part until we do. He is a reactive superhero rather than a detective on the hunt. He certainly isn't the world's greatest detective. In the grand scheme of Nolan's universe, he comes in about 4th. Gordon surpasses him, and even Dent manages to. But the most damning evidence is the fact that Blake is vastly superior in detecting. After all, it is he who discovers Bruce Wayne's biggest secret from a look on Batman's face, which clearly indicates some superhuman intellect level, since it fundamentally breaks the rule that no character in any superhero world is allowed to acknowledge that the heroes look suspiciously like the infamous billionaire or investigative journalists who are united in their obvious disdain for being inconspicuous. World's greatest detective? Blake's better. Number 2 reason why Nolan's Batman is actually a total pussy. He runs away into the sunset. One of the defining features of Batman as a character is the tragedy of a situation. Unlike a lot of other superheroes who are bound by powers and who are just inherently good, his past is a looming specter that compels him to be Batman. But not for the first time in Nolan's trilogy. By the end of The Dark Knight Rises, Bruce has somehow managed to get over the formerly devastating events that took his parents' lives, as well as the emotionally devastating death of Rachel, and crucially, he has got over the compulsion for good. What are we supposed to think? The Batman, a broken man, twisted and contorted into crime fighting, and a grotesque, unable to really live with society, who projects another grotesque to alienate himself, is cured? No, it isn't possible. Even in Nolan's narrative, that doesn't work. And Wayne's decision to turn his back on Batman looks more like cowardice than character resolution. It isn't that his job is done, it's more that he's running away. Of course, that isn't helped by the fact that he basically ran away to spend his life with a woman he barely knows and who he shared little more than a banter with, despite being promiscuous enough to basically bed and have sex with Talia after getting turned on by the rain. Yeah, the Batman is a bitch. Number 2, he runs away into the sunset. And I don't read the number. Number 1 is kind of silly though, but I'll just show this one. 10 reasons why Nolans Batman is a total pussy. He's scared of bats. That one was a little silly, but that was a little funny, but yeah. And basically, he called Nolan's Batman in general a big wimp. He is. He's a big fucking wimp. He's the wimpiest Batman. He's like, he growls a lot, but he was still a bitch. Every other Batman is, I'm sorry, is tougher than him. Clooney's Batman is tougher than Nolan's Batman. He roared a lot, really loud, but he was still a bitch. That's all I gotta say. I know Affleck is going to be 1,000 times better Batman than shitty Bale. He was weak. He was garbage. He sucked. He looked nothing like Batman. And Affleck looks exactly like Batman. Has the look, has the height, way bigger than Bale. He's gonna be awesome. Move on out. I'll put the link for the article on